A girl runs through rotting school corridors as a faceless ghost crawls along the ceiling, limbs snapping unnaturally. Her flashlight flickers. The mirror behind her ripples, then traps her in another time. Screams echo. The ghost whispers her name, inching closer with every heartbeat. She's alone. No way out. It lunges. She slips. A shadowed figure blocks the attack, golden eyes glowing in the dark. He doesn't speak, but something ancient protects her through him. This story twists through time, fear, and forgotten souls. You won't just watch, you'll feel the breath of something cold behind. I wasn't planning to stay late, but Mia begged me to come. She'd found this abandoned school on the outskirts of town, the kind people whispered about, but never entered. I didn't want to go, but Mia was always chasing something strange, and I couldn't let her do it alone. My name's Callie, journalism major, third year, quiet type. I've got short black hair, thick glasses, and a nervous habit of chewing on my sleeve when something feels wrong. That night, everything felt wrong from the moment we crossed the rusted gate. We climbed in through a broken window. The place smelled like rot and something else, something metallic, like old coins left too long in the rain. I stayed close to Mia. She was excited. I was cold. Inside, the halls were cracked and warped. Paint peeled like dead skin. Lockers bent open as if someone had clawed them from the inside. Our footsteps echoed weirdly, like the sound looped back to us seconds too late. Then Mia pointed. At the far end of the hallway, an old mirror leaned against the wall. It was huge, almost reaching the ceiling. Its surface rippled slightly like water. She walked toward it. I blinked. She vanished. I ran to the glass, nothing but my reflection. I touched it. Cold, then burning. The hallway shifted. The colors dulled. My skin tingled. When I looked up, the building had changed. Same shape but clean. New lockers, bright lighting, but not electric. Lanterns flickered along the walls. I turned. Someone screamed. A pale figure slithered from the shadows. Its face stretched long, but there were no eyes, just a gaping mouth filled with pointed teeth. It moved like smoke, its limbs jerking at impossible angles, neck bent the wrong way. I ran. It followed, silent, quick. It didn't chase like a person. It stalked like something that had waited too long. My breath caught in my throat. I stumbled through a door and fell down a stairwell. My ankle throbbed. I tried to stand. The thing was above me now, on the ceiling, crawling upside down with hands that clicked on the wood. And then someone stepped in front of me, a man, young, broad-shouldered, wearing a brown shirt rolled at the sleeves. His eyes glowed gold, sharp and steady. He didn't speak. He just lifted his hand and the air rippled. The ghost shrieked, twisting violently. The man stood still, as if holding back a storm with his bare will. Light poured from his palm. The figure burst into ash and vanished. I blacked out. When I came to, we were in a graveyard. The tombstones looked ancient. I asked the man who he was. He just said, "Eli, I've been stuck here since the war." I looked around. The year on the nearest stone said 1864. Then I saw her, Mia, pale, silent, standing behind a tree, eyes wide with fear. She raised her hand to wave, and then faded into nothing. Eli touched my shoulder. The world swirled again. I was back at the school. The mirror was broken, and my phone, somehow still in my pocket, now had one photo in it. It was me. But behind me, just barely visible in the dark, stood Eli. I hadn't spoken to anyone about that night. The mirror, the creature, Eli, all of it felt like a memory from someone else's life. But something inside me kept pulling me back. A week later, I saw another post on a forgotten message board. Someone named Jonah was asking about the same school, same mirror. Said his sister vanished there in 1997. I met him at a quiet diner off the highway. Jonah had a quiet way of speaking, like every word had been measured before it left his mouth. He had an old photo of the school. In the background, just barely visible, was the same mirror. We went back. This time, it was snowing. Thick, silent flakes covered everything like dust from another world. The school stood just as broken as before, but the air felt different, like it knew we were coming. Inside, we weren't alone. We saw a girl sitting in a corner of the main hallway. She was humming. Her dress was torn at the hem, her hair damp and hanging low over her face. I called out, but she didn't look up. Jonah stepped closer, hand out. She moved. Not naturally. Her body twitched like a puppet caught in wind. Her head jerked to the side, eyes dark, mouth slightly parted, whispering something too soft to hear. Jonah froze. His hand trembled. Then she screamed. It wasn't a sound, it was a feeling. Pressure in my chest, a weight behind my eyes. The hallway stretched, the windows shattered inward. Jonah grabbed my wrist and we ran. The walls changed, the color drained. We weren't in winter anymore. It was 1997. The posters were new, the paint fresh, the air warm and filled with the buzz of fluorescent lights. We turned a corner. The mirror was there, intact, waiting. Then the whisper came again, behind us. The girl wasn't human. Her skin sagged like it didn't fit. Her mouth opened wider than it should. Her arms reached too far. She glided more than walked. She wanted Jonah. He couldn't move. She looked just like his sister. Her voice was the same, but her eyes weren't. They were hollow. He backed away. She followed. I stepped between them. She hissed. The air grew cold. I shouted Jonah's name, but the mirror pulled me in. Suddenly I was underwater. No sound, just light and shadows. I floated through halls filled with children's laughter, then silence. When I surfaced, I was in a small classroom. A boy sat at a desk, writing. He looked up, Eli, but younger. He stood, confused. I tried to speak, but my throat burned. He stepped forward, reached for me. The ghost shattered through the window behind me. It wasn't the girl anymore. It was taller now, mouth full of teeth. Its laugh was dry and bitter. Eli moved fast, too fast. He grabbed something from the desk, an old key. It glowed faintly. He threw it at the ghost. It screamed and scattered into smoke. I collapsed again. This time I woke up outside. Jonah was there, pale, holding a photo. The mirror was gone, so was the school, just a foundation left, as if the building had burned down years ago. In the photo I stood next to Jonah and a girl I didn't know. She had Mia's eyes, and Eli's hand rested on her shoulder. Jonah said one thing before we left. He never had a sister. I didn't think the old motel was still in business. The neon sign outside flickered faintly, half the letters missing, and there was only one car in the lot, a rusted pickup parked sideways like the driver left in a hurry. Ava said she'd booked us a room for one night, just to get away from campus stress. I didn't ask too many questions. I'd been feeling drained lately, like something heavy had settled inside my chest and refused to leave. She handed me a key that looked like it belonged in a museum. Room 5. The doorknob stuck. The walls inside were painted in a yellow that didn't look intentional, and the carpet felt damp under my shoes. Still, I followed her in, tossing my bag on the bed without even looking around. Ava was the kind of girl who acted like she was always in control, always had a plan. Her boyfriend, Zach, showed up an hour later with fast food and a backpack full of energy drinks. The three of us sat in a circle, pretending to relax, but it wasn't natural. There was something off in the air, too still, too quiet, like the building was holding its breath. I kept glancing at the mirror across from the bed. It wasn't just the dust or the strange tilt of it. The reflection looked a second too slow, like it was trying to catch up with us. I told myself I was imagining it, that my brain was fried from finals and anxiety, but my hands had already started to sweat. Zach was scrolling through his phone when he froze. He turned the screen to show Ava and whispered that his camera app was glitching. The screen displayed our room, but we weren't in it. The beds were empty. The lights were off. He reset it twice. Same thing. None of us laughed. That's when the mirror pulsed. Just once. Not a trick of the light, not the wind. A visible ripple like something beneath the glass had moved. I stood up, heart racing. Ava reached for my arm and said she saw it too. Zach grabbed the mirror and pulled it off the wall. Behind it was nothing but rotten drywall. And then the room changed. The ceiling sagged lower, the air turned thick, and when I looked at my reflection again, this time in the window, I saw 4 people. I turned slowly. Ava, Zach, me, and the 4th figure stood near the bathroom door. She looked like me, but her face was blank, pale, and her hands were stained with something dark that wasn't water. Zach shouted, but it came out distant, like we were underwater. The floor beneath us stretched, pulling away like taffy, and suddenly I was falling through it, not screaming, not moving, just watching the motel room twist into something unfamiliar. I landed in the same room, but not quite. It was cleaner, brighter, and sunlight streamed through the windows. But everything was wrong. The posters were from another era. The magazines on the desk said 1975. A knock at the door snapped me out of it. I opened it to find a girl about my age with short blonde curls and a denim jacket. She asked if I was okay, said she heard a noise. I asked her the date. She laughed, thought I was joking. I wasn't. I looked in the mirror again. The girl from before was gone, but I wasn't alone. A boy stood behind me, tall, dark hair, quiet eyes. He said I shouldn't have touched the mirror, that it was never meant to be moved. He told me his name was Eli, and that he'd been stuck here since 1983. I asked if there was a way out. He didn't answer right away. He said the only way was to undo what I did, but he didn't know what that meant anymore. Time didn't work the same here. When I blinked, the room changed again. Dust returned. The light dimmed. I wasn't in 1975 anymore. I could hear Ava calling my name from somewhere distant, like an echo trapped in glass. The mirror cracked in the corner, a thin line crawling downward like a warning. I reached out to touch it. Behind the glass, I saw myself standing in the present, staring into the motel mirror, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then I was pulled back. Same room. But now, the mirror is gone, and so are they. No Ava, no Zach, no Eli, just me, and something scratching softly from inside the walls. I didn't plan to stay late at the bookstore, but my shift ran over, and the last customer wouldn't stop asking questions about obscure authors. By the time I stepped outside, the street was already empty, dark clouds swelling above the rooftops. I walked faster than usual, clutching my bag tighter, hoping the bus hadn't left yet. My name is Emery. I study anthropology and work part-time to cover rent. I usually keep to myself, but that night I felt strange, like something was subtly pulling me toward the alley near the back entrance. I don't normally take that route, but my feet turned before I even thought it through. The alley was narrow, lit only by a dying bulb. A girl stood there in an old-fashioned dress, barefoot, holding what looked like a small notebook. She didn't seem to notice me at first, but the moment I stepped closer, she looked up with eyes that didn't belong in this century. I froze. My phone had no signal, and the air around her shimmered slightly, like heat rising from asphalt. She stepped forward, offered me the notebook, then vanished before my eyes. I blinked, my heart thudding. The notebook was heavier than expected, bound in cloth, handwritten in slanted letters I couldn't quite decipher. I shoved it into my bag and hurried home. My roommate, Theo, was still awake, watching some documentary. I told him what happened. He didn't laugh. That's why I trust him. He just took the notebook, flipped through it, and said it looked like some kind of ritual log or a travel journal. Except most entries weren't dated. We both stared at one particular page. It mentioned a place that shouldn't exist. Sycamore Hollow, a village that burned down in the late 1800s. I remembered it vaguely from a case study in class, an unsolved disappearance of dozens of people, wiped from maps after an unexplained fire. The entry ended mid-sentence, like the writer had been interrupted. I couldn't sleep. That girl's face kept flashing in my mind. When I finally drifted off, I jolted awake to the sound of paper fluttering. The notebook had fallen open to a different page. This one had a strange circular symbol drawn over it. I reached out to close it, but the moment I touched the page, my room disappeared. I wasn't dreaming. The smell of smoke and damp earth hit me first. I stood in the center of a dirt road, surrounded by cabins, oil lamps, and people dressed in old clothes. Someone screamed. I turned to see a man chasing a boy down the street. No one else reacted. It was like they didn't see it, or didn't want to. A woman grabbed my wrist and whispered something I couldn't understand. Her hands were cold, her face pale, but her eyes looked terrified. She shoved a coin into my palm and pointed toward the woods. Then she vanished just like the girl had. That was when I saw it. A tall figure draped in black near the edge of the trees, head tilted slightly, unmoving. I backed away, heart pounding, but the ground beneath me crumbled. Theo appeared out of nowhere, grabbed my hand and pulled me up. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have known how. But his grip was solid, his voice calm, and his eyes full of panic. He muttered something about finding the symbol again, about using it as a doorway. We ran. The village was silent, the buildings shifting slightly each time we looked away. The path twisted unnaturally, and every turn brought us back to the same cabin. I felt the coin burning in my pocket. I pulled it out, and it started to glow faintly. Theo said to drop it in the fire pit in the center of town. We didn't know why, but it felt right. As the coin hit the ashes, the ground shook. The figure at the edge of the woods stepped forward. I couldn't see its face, but I felt its presence like a heavy fog. Then light burst from the pit and everything went white. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my room. The notebook was gone. So was Theo. The apartment looked untouched, but something felt off. I checked the mirror. My eyes had a faint ring of gold around the iris that hadn't been there before. Later that week, a girl came into the bookstore. She wore the same old-fashioned dress, smiled faintly, and handed me a folded paper. It was a page from the missing notebook, the same symbol. She didn't speak, just placed it in my palm and walked out. I never saw her again. But every time I pass that alley, the lights flicker. And sometimes I think I hear Theo's voice whispering my name from somewhere far away. I didn't even know this town existed until my car broke down 3 miles from it. I was on my way back from a weekend hiking trip with Aaron and Mira when the engine gave out. There was no cell signal, no passing cars, just this winding 2-lane road swallowed by trees. We argued about who should go look for help. In the end, I volunteered. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed a moment away from them. Maybe the silence of the forest felt easier than listening to Mira's complaints. Either way, I crossed the ditch and followed an old sign pointing toward Crow Haven, 2 miles. The air shifted as I walked. Everything got quieter, as if the birds were holding their breath. The deeper I went, the more I noticed strange details. Broken fences covered in moss, trees with deep gashes like claw marks. And then there was the girl. She stood on the path ahead of me, maybe 10 or 11. Pale dress, muddy feet, long brown hair covering her face. I froze, unsure whether to speak. Before I could say anything, she turned and walked into the woods without a sound. I should have turned back, but my legs moved on their own, following her. The woods opened into a clearing with an old stone well at the center, and she was gone. I called out, nothing, just wind and the quiet drip of water echoing from the well's depths. I took a step closer, and my head spun. My stomach lurched. It felt like gravity had flipped. I blinked, and the clearing was gone. I was standing in the middle of a dirt street, surrounded by wooden houses that looked like they hadn't been touched since the 1800s. The sky was dull. Everything was tinted with a soft brown haze, as if I'd walked into a faded photograph. A boy around my age, maybe early 20s, stumbled out of a barn. He looked just as stunned to see me. He asked if I was from the new roads. I told him no, and his face fell. He introduced himself as Elias. He said the town had been stuck in this strange version of itself for decades. People wandered in and never left. Time didn't move normally here. He warned me not to speak to the woman in the red veil. That night, they let me sleep in the chapel. Mira and Aaron felt like a lifetime away. I couldn't explain it, but the longer I stayed, the less I wanted to leave. There was something comforting in the stillness, in the routine of it all. But then the dreams started. Always the same, the girl at the well, whispering words I couldn't understand. Then fire. Then the woman with the red veil, standing over me, her face shifting like smoke, never solid, never human. Elias told me the town made deals to survive. People were sacrificed to hold the veil between worlds. Once chosen, there was no escape. I laughed it off at first, but the next morning, my name was painted in ash on the church door. Elias tried to help me run. We made it as far as the well before the ground split. Figures emerged, people with hollow eyes like their souls had been scraped out. One of them was Mira. She looked at me but didn't recognize me. Her voice was wrong. The girl in white appeared again. She reached out and placed her hand on my chest. The pain was instant, like being pulled inside out. Then there was only silence, and light, and wind through trees. When I opened my eyes, I was back by the broken car. Aaron was waving at me from the hood, asking if I found help. I nodded slowly. My shirt was damp, my hands were covered in dirt. I never spoke of it again. But sometimes in the quiet, I still see her, the girl by the well. And I wonder if the version of me that stayed behind is still wandering those faded streets, waiting to be remembered. I hadn't planned on staying in that town more than a night. It was just a stop between 2 long bus rides, a nowhere place with flickering streetlights and quiet diners. I picked the cheapest motel, one with faded curtains and a buzzing ice machine outside my door. I'm Emery, 24, work remote, always traveling. I like being invisible, blending into places that don't ask questions. That night, I ate a sandwich on the motel, bed and watched reruns until my eyes ached. The walls were thin, and I could hear a couple arguing in the room next door, something about a missing necklace and a broken promise. I tried to ignore it, but just as I drifted off, the voices cut off mid-sentence. No footsteps, no door slamming, just silence. And then a soft tap on my wall, like knuckles dragging slowly. I waited, thinking maybe it was pipes or wind. But then it came again. Deliberate, slow, like someone tracing the shape of a door that used to be there. I got up, walked over, and pressed my ear to the wall. Nothing. When I sat back down, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer, but the voicemail that followed was just static. I didn't want to admit it, but something about the air in that room had shifted. It felt heavier, slower. The next morning, I checked out early. I hadn't slept, and I was itching to leave. But the town bus was late, so I wandered across the street to a tiny antique store. A girl around my age stood behind the counter, red hair pulled into a loose braid, sketching something in a notebook. She glanced up, eyes sharp. "You stayed at the old Glenview last night, didn't you?" she asked. I nodded, confused. She didn't say anything more, just handed me a small paper with a drawing, my room number, the wallpaper pattern, even the old radio I'd unplugged before bed. My skin prickled. Her name was Riley. She said she used to live in that motel when she was a kid. Told me not all doors there led to the hallway. Some, if you opened them just right, led you somewhere else. Older, colder. I laughed, awkward, not knowing if she was joking. But that night, the motel showed up again, this time in a dream. Same room, but outside the window was no longer the parking lot. Just forest. Dark. Endless. I turned around in the dream and Riley was there, whispering, "Don't open it." I woke up back in my own bed, or I thought I had. The wallpaper was wrong. The air smelled of old dust. When I ran outside, I was still in that town, but no one remembered the antique store. No one knew Riley. I found an old newspaper at the bus station, dated 1996. There was a picture. Same store, same girl, missing since August that year. I sat on the curb and watched the bus pull in. For a second, I saw her in the window, eyes watching me. I didn't get on. I was supposed to be helping Layla pack, but she never showed up. We'd agreed to meet at the old apartment complex near Willow Creek. It was the one being demolished next month, the one no one ever talked about. I'd never been inside before, but she said there were things she left behind. I'm Amber. I've always kept to myself, mostly books and quiet mornings. Layla and I shared a dorm in our second year. She had this energy that pulled people in, and even when she was reckless, it felt like the world bent a little to let her through. I didn't expect her text last night, just a location and the word come. The building looked like it had given up. Cracked bricks, broken windows, everything covered in a layer of dust like snow. I hesitated at the door. The lock was rusted off, and inside smelled like rain trapped in time. 3 floors up, I thought I heard movement. I called her name once, then again. No answer. I walked past what used to be apartments, each one hollow, abandoned, as if lives had evaporated mid-step. Room 3B had its door half open. I pushed it gently. The light from outside barely reached inside, but I could make out an old mattress, torn curtains, and a chair turned away from the door. On the floor was Layla's backpack. Something was wrong. Her phone was on the bed, screen cracked, still glowing faintly. I reached for it and felt the temperature shift. Colder, heavier, like something noticed me. Behind me, the chair creaked. I turned, but it was still, nothing had moved. I whispered Layla's name again. Then a voice, soft, male, spoke from the hallway. "You shouldn't be here." I stepped into the hall and saw him. Tall, maybe early 20s, pale like he hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. He didn't blink. Said he was looking for someone too. His name was Theo. He claimed he saw a girl matching Layla's description run toward the basement. Theo led the way. The stairs to the basement groaned beneath us. There was no light down there, just the echo of water dripping and something faint, music. A lullaby, playing from somewhere deeper. I hesitated near the last step, but Theo reached for my hand. His grip was cold. We walked toward the sound. In the far corner of the basement was a mirror, cracked but upright. It wasn't reflecting us. It showed a room with Layla in it. She looked trapped, calling my name, mouthing words I couldn't hear. The moment I touched the glass, I was pulled in. The air changed. I was now in a version of the apartment, cleaner but older. Layla was beside me, dazed. There were voices outside the door. not human. Theo appeared again, but something in his face had changed. He told us the only way out was to remember who brought us here. Layla shook her head. She said we never came alone. Someone followed us. I realized then, I didn't know if Theo was real, or if he ever left the mirror. We escaped through a corridor that didn't exist in the real world. It led us back to the roof. When I turned around, the building was gone, just empty land. I haven't seen Theo since. Layla barely speaks of it. We know we weren't supposed to leave with the knowledge of that place. But I still hear the lullaby sometimes, especially when I pass mirrors.